music. It's real hip hop music. Come on, come on.
1212. Once again, it's another episode of Major Journalism. I am your host, David Traum Shanks. Another episode. Uh, the beautiful thing about sort of the pivot that I took in this show, this podcast, after like the first or second episode, trying to get this podcast up and running and reaching out to folks and wanting to do all of these cool interviews and all of these interesting people. And, like most of you know, who may be getting into the journalism field or the broadcasting, podcasting field, it's hard sometimes when you're just getting started to attract a certain guests that you want to kind of elevate the conversation. Not that you're chasing celebrities or anything like that, but just individuals you want to bring in to have different discussions and, just to be able to build with the audience and bring interesting topics. So in that struggle, I guess I would say, something came to me and told me, hey, man, you have a pool of like genius all around you. Start to tap in. I started to pay more attention to my IG feed and some of my friends. And, now I got guys who are in fintech and entrepreneurs and domestic violence advocates and all kinds of amazing people just in my circle, in my pool that I've been blessed to be around. And so with that, today I have another one of my homies who is doing some major things in the education field. Um, I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm like a quasi intellectual, like, to be on the low, low. So I started tapping in with hip hop ed and that movement. And another one of my bros, Dr. Chris Emden, that I, will hopefully get on a future episode. And in tapping in with Dr. Edmond and getting in with the hip hop ed crew on Tuesdays, I started seeing my homie Shauna on the IG feeds and in the Twitter space. And I'm like, yo, that's my dog. And so I started tapping in with her, and she's got this movement called Teach for the Culture. I'm wearing one of the shirts that she blessed me with. So I said I gotta grab you. So I told you that like last year.
Yeah.
I just had to get my stuff together. But I said, yo, we gotta have a conversation because I just love what I'm seeing from the movement, and I wanted to just bring a conversation around education, and particularly education for our youth, and just do a deep dive. So I have Shauna Brown, educator, TU alum,
That's right.
and founder of Teach for the Culture. Shauna, what's good, man?
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. As soon as you reached out last year, I was like, yo, I'm in. I know we go back to what, 94?
94.
And I've just been amazed to see what you've done over the years as well. And so when you reached out, I said, I have to do it. I have to be here. It's an honor for me. I'm humbled to be invited. So, yep, I am here. As you said, founder of Teach for the Culture. I started the movement about almost 4 years ago now, and it's grown to a global scale. Um, it's a movement as well as a brand. I've been in education for a long time, and it's just it's a passion project as well as a business, and so I am enjoying it.
I love that. So tell me, catch me up real quick, catch our audience up, but catch me up real quick on post Temple to now, specifically in the education field. You don't got to tell me all your business. I'm saying, as an educator, catch me up from leaving Temple to now.
Yeah, so I left Temple. I went on to Columbia University, where I got my
Nice.
master's in urban education. From there, I taught in Brooklyn for a little bit, and then
I
I
thought
went to
so.
Connecticut. Yep. So I've taught in Connecticut. In addition to teaching, classroom teaching, I've been, a coordinator for the district level. I've worked on the state level with the government and as well as been a school administrator and school leader. And so, I've done all these things within education. All of it has like really, really, really dope experiences. Always at the center has always been like equity and justice, and just making sure that we're doing everything possible to give our youth the best educational experience possible. That's always been kind of, at my core and at my center. And now I have left the public school system, and this is my first year going full time as an entrepreneur. So I've been both educator and entrepreneur in the space. But around some of the same issues, equity, social justice, and just making sure that we're catapulting the youth into the future and preparing them to do whatever they want to do in life.
Okay,
So
so that's amazing. I didn't know you left the classroom. Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations. So this is perfect because you've been in administration, you've been in the classroom, and now you're on the advocacy side. So
That's
I
right.
love that you've seen every aspect of it, and it's perfect for kind of the conversation that I wanted to have because, you know, like I said, in my mind, I'm a teacher. And
Always.
um, I do it through reps, but
That's right.
I want to know, okay, what, and I have my own ideas and thoughts, but let's say 4 years ago in starting Teach for the Culture, and then 4 years later, kind of leaving the classroom and going full throttle with this. Take me through that journey. What inspired the organization, the movement, the brand, and where was the where did the sense of urgency lie in going full time with it?
Whew.
Because I know you're not just selling T-shirts.
Nah, not at all. And I love that. I love this question actually. So when I started out in 2018, this was before I even started like selling t-shirts, period. It was just about building community around something that I love. And so connecting with others from, from everywhere, from other educators or with people who and I consider an educator not to just be educators who work in schools, but all educators, right? All of us, the whole village. And
Mhm.
so just building community around that, building community around advocating for youth, um, building community around, different pedagogies. You mentioned hip hop ed. That was a big influence also in my starting Teach for the Culture. Um, and just really wanting to come together and share resources. In a lot of schools, um, you know, across the nation, Black, Indigenous, and Brown people are really the minority in the teaching force. 80% of the teaching field is white women. So
Right,
80% of all teachers are white women.
right.
4%, 5% are Black women, and then
Mm,
2% Black males, right?
wow,
For Latino, it's about 6% and 8%. And then for Indigenous, it's less than 2% of the teachers
wow,
nationwide. And
wow.
so in many of the schools, you know, um, people of color who are educators are also the minority on the teaching staff
Mm,
in many places. In most of the major cities, it's a little bit more diverse, but as you move out, it's there's maybe one or two in each school, sometimes none at all. And so I really wanted to build community around that too, with educators who understood kind of the culture and the background of our children, our youth, and who were committed to uplifting and serving without bias and just really with love and wanting the best for our children. So I started out again, back in 2018, building community around that. In 2019, I decided to come out with the first T-shirt, which was just Teach for the Culture. Again, I just wanted that to be like um, a way to kind of, you know, unify us around this movement, for people to um, it was also like a call to action. So Teach for the
right,
Culture is not just a brand, but it's like, no, Teach for the Culture, a
right.
call to action. And so when you show up with that, you're carrying something bigger than you. It's not
Mhm.
just about the job. It's not just about where you are in that moment. It's about community. It's about connecting the past, present, and catapulting us into the future. Um, and really just about, love and liberation. It's about reaching the youth through their culture.
Hmm.
And then I would say in 2020, so that was 2019, I started the shirts. And then in 2020, I began expanding the designs on some of the t-shirts. We went into, COVID happened in March of 2020. And by April and then May, when, the George Floyd situation happened, and there was like a new kind of awakening, I'd say, for people who were not already, vested in making sure we're teaching equitable and focusing on justice.
Right.
And so that just that new interest, more people started to kind of come on, jump on board, um, and become more committed to justice and education. And so, and that's when, and all along I had always, been speaking my truth. That's kind of my
Yeah. No. No.
that's
No.
kind of
Yeah.
my thing. Like I just it was no filter really. It was just about, okay, this is, this is what it is. This is what we have to get through. This is what I'm fighting for. This is what I'm pushing for. And I just continued to speak my truth, and more people started to kind of come on board and and share their truths as well. And so that's where the movement's been.
That's amazing. Whew. So, as a educator, administrator, well, let's go there because I'm interested to know kind of the challenges that teachers face with the administration, with the bureaucracy of the education system, and sort of the differences between being in the classroom and being someone in the classroom who is passionate about what they want to do and is passionate about the children in the classroom, and that struggle with administration, and then becoming part of the administration. And I guess I can imagine wanting to kind of do some work in the system to affect change in the classroom, and probably hitting a wall and realizing that your lone efforts probably were not enough to cause any real change, and then maybe deciding to step outside of the system and kind of work not against it, but work with the actual educators from the outside in. Like, I'm very interested in that transition. So let's start as a young educator, with all the excitement, all the passion in the world, ready to jump in the classroom and pour into these young folks. And what were the first kind of signs of, oh, okay, there's more to this than just teaching?
Yeah, so for me it actually started as a teenager. Like before I went to college, before I went to Temple, before I enrolled in any education program, like official program, is something that's always been a part of me. Like I've
Hmm.
known I wanted to go into education since I was 3 years old. And
Wow.
I started my first business at age 12, a babysitting business. I taught like church school at age 16. And so it's always been a part of me. The advocacy side has always been a part of me as well. As a high school student at age 16, um, I led a walkout basically because of some of the disparate treatment that students of color were facing as opposed to the white students. We were being more heavily surveilled. We were, they would put a lot of the Black students in like the lower level classes and have the white students in like the honors and advanced levels. It was like a, disparate treatment in that,
Hmm.
with counselors, guidance counselors. And so at age 16, I was like, nope, we're not having this. Let a whole
I love
walkout.
it. I
And
love
then I
it.
did my first, like, and they listened, and they listened. The other part was we didn't, we weren't being reflected in the curriculum. And so as a result of that whole thing, We got an African American history class. We got an African American literature class. Teachers went through diversity training. I was able to actually, lead one of the sessions for teachers as a 16-year-old student. And that was the first time, like, I remember telling my story as a student and seeing some of the teachers cry. And I was like, oh, that was the first time to me. I was like, oh, they're human. Like, you actually do care about this.
Wow, wow.
That was at 16. So it's always been something that's been a part of me. It's always been bigger than any job or any degree or anything else like that. It's just been something that's in me. And so when I came into teaching, I did my student teaching in Philly. I taught in Brooklyn and then Hartford. I didn't see as many of the issues um, in terms of disparities within students because most of the students were all African American or West Indian, all Black. And then when I started working for the magnet school system and other systems, and I started working on the state level, I started seeing it across the state and in different schools where there were diverse bodies of students. And so it kicked right back, and I was like, nope, this is what I'm fighting for. This is what I'm going for. Always had the energy. As a classroom teacher, I was never a teacher that came in like kind of afraid to speak truth or afraid to deviate from the curriculum. I'm always like, nah, I'm going to give them what they need. So we're going to go above and beyond. Like, to me, the curriculum is just a baseline.
Right.
And it was like, I'm going to go above and beyond that to pour into them and also teach life skills and also do things that are for the culture, like things that bring students to like just alive. Right. And joy was always at the center of that. And
Joy.
these are, that's one of my quotes says, joy and learning must coexist. And I live that. I've always believed that. And it's always been a part of what I do. As an administrator, I started seeing that I think that as you go up in levels throughout the educational system, I started seeing more and more of the issues that I didn't even see when I was a classroom teacher, or I saw it from a different level, a different perspective. And then I also saw that when you intentionally, call those things out and try to work to change, I saw pushback against that also. So I saw that, okay, this is not just people not knowing what to do. It's actually pushing back against what should be done.
It's
And
the system
kind of,
working the way it's supposed to work.
yes.
Yeah, you're screaming it's broken, and they're screaming, no, it's not.
That's
Yeah,
right. And just
yeah,
like
yeah.
going along as if it's nothing. And so again, as an administrator too, like I've always just been myself in whatever space I occupy within education, within the educational space. So I'm always going to speak my truth. And so I was never really afraid of, oh my gosh, I have to, pretend to be someone else or not speak truth. No, like this is what I'm here for. This is part of my life mission. And I'm going to speak my truth and say what needs to be done, do what needs to be done, connect with my students, my families, and, just continue on fighting for them to have the best educational experience possible. And so I did see, I also have a son who, me being an educator, having gone through the system and now watching him through the system, I'm able to advocate from that side. And I'm also able to advocate through my work with Teach for the Culture and training and consulting with school districts, etc. So,
I have so many directions I want to go in, and I'm trying to like be linear. Give me some of the tenets, some of the pillars of your platform. You said joy and learning must go hand in hand. So, I don't know if you have a mission statement, but give me some of the pillars of Teach for the Culture. If I were going to rock this shirt, like you said, teach for the culture. But if I'm going to rock this shirt, if I'm going to claim to be an ally, what should I be looking to do, especially as an educator? And
well,
like you
first
said,
it is.
we're all educators in the village.
That's
But
right.
yeah.
That's right. So as you said, like one of my kind of taglines or quotes is joy and learning must coexist. I believe that when you're able to center joy in the work, you're able to work with people as humans and not just like, students coming through, not just worksheets, not just a curriculum, but actual humans where you touch their spirit, not just, handing in work and getting grades. It's like bigger than that. It's like having them actually connect and feel that sense of joy and be seen as
Oh
humans in
shoot.
the work and not just numbers, not just data points, not just people that are just producing work for you to put grades in the grade book. So that's one. My other is love and liberation, right? That's another. It's a t-shirt, but it's also one of my main tenets that I kind of center. With the system as how it's set up, it's not again, it doesn't really humanize educators or students. And I believe when love is part of the mission, again, it humanizes the process and not just treat us like, robots. And
Mm,
so the system in a lot of places is built on hate within systemic racism. And so love is kind of the opposite of that, right? And then, liberation, to me, it's moving towards freedom. And when I say freedom, it's freedom from the oppressive systems, right? Like right now within the educational system, Black students are over policed, whereas overrepresented in suspensions, we're overrepresented in identification for special education wrongly. Like if you need special education, that's a different thing. Um, we are underrepresented in gifted and talented programs. We're underrepresented in advanced placement programs and things like that. And so liberation to me is being free from that, right? It's being free to be able to develop, for students to be able to develop into their full potential and get the best experience possible, not just experience tied to, their zip code where they're getting a lower quality education or where they're only lucky to get in certain schools. Like for every student, we should be free to the best educational experience possible and free from um, some of the more negative things that happen, unfortunately, to Black and Brown students within the system. And it's systemic. Again, it's nationwide. The data is all there, and that needs to change.
okay. So love, liberation, and freedom, right?
Mhm.
Within a system that systemically deprives Black people, melanated people, people of color, poor people of those three things. The system's literally set up for that. I have had many conversations with my old podcast partner, Professor Mickey Hess, who teaches at Rider, around my theory, my belief that at least from pre K to sixth grade, our community should be educating our children outside of the system.
Mhm.
So my freedom looks a little less like changing the system and more like coming out of the system.
Mhm.
I want to tie that in with COVID
Mhm.
and the homeschooling
Mhm.
catastrophe, for lack of a better word. Um, the disparities that came up around digital,
Mhm.
what do you want to call it, access, for lack of a better
Mhm.
word, and how disproportionate some of our children, especially those in lower income communities, were kind of out, just unable to learn
Yep.
for almost an entire year. And what that means moving forward, now that we're kind of back in the schools, but we have this thing that's been exposed. We got the CRT stuff going, all the things that have surfaced
Mhm.
in the last, election cycle, say,
Yep.
piggybacking on love, freedom, and liberty for our children.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on how we should be educating our children, where we should be educating our children? I know this is a lot, but we'll break it down.
Yeah.
Homeschooling
Yep.
versus trying to change the system. Just give me let's talk about that. Let's
Yeah, well,
deep dive
first,
in there.
when you said like educating outside of the system, that to me, that's a must.
Mm,
Like the system is not, especially if you're, I connect a lot to the tenets of hip hop as well. So especially if you're looking at knowledge of self, you're not going to get that in the school or
right.
the way it's set up right now. That has to like come from home. Like first, that's your parents, your guardians, your the people who raised you. That's the first teachers. And so I believe a lot of the education has to happen outside of the school system because the school system is not really set up to for many children to thrive. Like if you're rich, maybe
Hmm.
if the curriculum has always reflected you and your people and always shows you as the um, has you in the center, maybe. But for a
Hmm.
lot of black and brown children, people, children from income suppressed communities, that's it's not happening, and it
Hmm.
has to like the village has to be a part of that. Has to be the first part, and then continue on K to 6, and then even beyond that. And so, and as you mentioned, COVID, a lot of the disparities that many people were already talking about and trying to address just became more amplified during that time, especially
Right.
during 2020. But it's the stuff that some people have been talking about for years,
Right.
years and years and years. It just became amplified. Um, and so, yeah, unfortunately, as you know, in many places, especially in some of the rural places, like I know in Florida, there were, I think they said at one time it was like 10,000 students just gone missing, like no
Wow.
communication, nothing. There are other school systems though that already had like the connection to technology or one-to-one devices, so they were more
Hmm.
easily able to kind of get back on and continue on with the learning. But even still, there were some just disconnects and less time spent with students connected to schools and teachers. As an administrator during that time, I also saw though that the students who kind of just went missing weren't really connected to school in the first. They're just coming because they had to. They weren't really connected.
Mm.
But the
Hmm.
ones who were already like tapped in and connected and felt connected to the school, those are the ones that kind of continued to through Zoom and however else they remain connected for
I'm
the most
curious.
part.
I'm curious if that experience, because now I'm doing, time in my head and math in my head, in the timetable. I wonder if that experience during 2020 was like the straw that broke the camel's back
I
for
would say,
you. Like if that was the that was the last
yep,
straw of, yeah, yeah,
yep.
I could imagine.
And it was also, I think, for schools, it showed like what's really important. Like all the time spent from a lot of school officials, like policing your uniform or the technology or other things. At the end of the day, were those things really important? Like when there
Mm,
was nothing else except you trying to call parents and students and trying to connect them and get them online, what is really important? To show that
mm,
the connection was important.
right.
And so again, like Teach for the Culture, again, for me, it's that human piece. It's the humanizing, it's the connection, it's the community, it's making sure we're prioritizing, joy, um, which is tied to, the love and liberation and all of that. But and connecting to their culture and their interests also.
Right.
That's
Right.
another huge part. So
So the I guess the main work so far has been kind of rallying other educators around, the cause, so to speak. What Just shed some light on your interactions with educators, especially those of any color, because I see you have
mhm,
advocates on in all shades. Just talk about. I'm curious. Both obviously the small majority of us who are in the classrooms or in administration, but also some of our white allies who are teaching in these urban centers, these urban environments, and just but want to do the right thing. talk about some of the interaction, some of the feedback that you've heard, some of the struggles, even some of the victories that you've received from fellow educators.
Yeah, so that actually has been, I mean, just people like the random DMs I get at times, or the comments, or people reaching out saying, "You changed my practice. I heard you say this and I did this, and it's made a huge difference. You've changed the way I look at things. You've changed the way I think about things." I get those DMs and messages and comments like all the time from people of different age levels, different backgrounds, and from different geographic regions. And it's always like, wow. Because sometimes when I'm doing it, when I'm saying things, when I'm working with people, I'm not even thinking about like it doesn't sink in until I
Right,
get those messages at times.
right.
But I did see a shift, right, with people from certain states, especially when the anti-CRT legislation started coming out, when they started um, saying that, if you teach X, Y, and Z, you could be fined, you could lose your job.
Hmm.
Some people in certain places started to get like less vocal, I would say,
Hmm.
right,
What?
or less. Mm,
Oh, well, when your job's on the line, what do
mhm.
you what do you make of all of that?
It's
Just
distraction.
mm,
And I think they started to see, momentum in terms of the country moving forward, educators moving forward, more people becoming more aware of, the need to not only center, a Euro-centered curriculum, and people started becoming more aware of just, the disparities that existed within the system, both socioeconomic and based on race. And so this was like the pushback. But all
mm,
through history, this has happened. Like this has always been kind of the playbook. I think we're seeing it even more now because they can see that the movement is happening. They can see that people are starting to wake up and change and move forward. And so
mm,
this is like a nope, we're going to try to stop you right here. Right.
mm,
And so it's unfortunate. It's also another reason why I always advocate that the learning must happen like outside the classroom in schools. Like nobody's going to legislate me teaching the truth in my own household.
right, right,
Community
right.
centers, community organizations, just again tapping into that village. Like we've always educated each other. We've
Mm,
always held our kids up. We've always been able to do that. And so it's just essential that we continue, because nobody can legislate what you teach your own kids
mm,
outside of the
mm,
school. They can try to, schools are governed and they have to follow the policies and the laws and, legislation. But outside of that, like that's where we have to keep pushing.
mm.
And even
So I
within,
guess
mhm.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and even in terms of the legislators that are pushing back and making all these laws, I think it also calls for educators to be more savvy and understanding of how that works, who these legislators are, because these are people that the community votes into office. You
Right,
vote them in.
right,
And
right.
so if they're not representing, where you stand or what you are working for, then they need to be voted out. But we have to be savvy enough to understand who they are, who's voting for what, and like really examine and interrogate the system.
Indeed, indeed. So I mean, hmm, it sounds like, which I don't disagree with. There's like an ultimate kind of like revolutionary approach and stance, but there's like in and in the meantime kind of approach as well, right? And so, sometimes every black parent, every brown parent in the country is not just going to pull their child out of school,
That's
right?
right.
Like we can want that, but that's not going to happen.
That's right.
People are not they don't understand sort of the concept of homeschooling. They don't have
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
We're not organized enough to really
Hmm.
have communities of homeschools like we probably should. So there is some push that we have to give to the system to kind of implement some things that will help today,
That's right.
right? But walk me through your thoughts on, I guess, what, and this is not a wrap up question.
Hmm.
We're just 10 years, like teach for the culture, a 10-year plan. If there's some things you're doing in quiet that you don't want to say on the airwaves, that's perfectly fine. I understand that. We can have that conversation offline. But as much as you can share, sort of the goals. In my mind, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, man, we need to be doing Saturday schools, and we need to have teach for the culture Saturday schools in different,
Hmm.
centers in Detroit and Brooklyn and
Hmm.
Philly and Baltimore. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? My head starts to go. So, what can we do on both of those fronts? You know, revolutionary and kind of advocating and working with the system and within the system,
Hmm.
pinpointing people in the system who are doing the work and making sure they're supported
Hmm.
while kind of building these revolutionary fronts so that when this thing falls, because it's falling, we make sure that ours are secure.
That's right. Whew. That's a loaded question too, but like absolutely it has to happen from all different angles. Like there's so much work to do on every single level, outside and inside. And
Mhm.
so in terms
You've
of teach,
taken yourself outside, so that's why
yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things I started last year and I'm still continuing to build is something called Culture University. And through Culture
Mm,
the University, I'm going to be having, and that's under the umbrella of Teach for the Culture. It's going to be opportunities for students to engage in some learning, especially some of the learning that they're not getting within the system right now, as well as for educators to also kind of take courses and things like that as well. Um,
mm,
I think being, a part of just being together in community is also going to be essential as we move forward. And that's like one person can't do it, right? One city
mhm,
can't do it. A few people can't do it. It has to be kind of like you said, like coalitions like across the country and across the globe. And people are ready, but I think if you think it's just you alone or you and two other people trying to make all these changes and everyone's doing it in their own pockets, the change is going to be slower,
mhm,
right? But if
mhm,
you're together in community and there's people on all sides and all fronts doing the work, we have to have like policy level, curriculum level, um, home level, K-5, high school, the bridge from high school to post secondary. Like there's so much. Um, so again, it just to me, it's really that village energy for me, and that's
mm.
part of what Teach for the Culture is about. That's how I plan to continue to move forward and link up with other organizations, link up with other groups, link up with other because there's a lot of them out there, and just people who are similarly aligned in mission in terms of education and education for our youth and equity, aligning with those people and just continue to push at all levels, outside and inside.
So Culture University will be a mostly online platform.
Yes, it's gonna be mostly
Okay.
online, but I'm looking to do some in person things as well, at least
Okay.
locally for now, and then maybe branching out. So I have some things
And-
like in the works right now in New York already, and then in Connecticut. Um, and so we'll see from there.
okay. Okay. So are these like, because I'm picturing like, I don't know, like, we're not doing no corny like cultural sensitivity courses
No.
or nothing like that.
Mhm.
But at the same token, I think that you have an expertise and can tap into expertise that could guide some educators that are from outside of the community on just being able to provide for our children. And again,
That's right.
that's part of like the working with the system as a, because whether we like it or not, the children are disproportionately being taught by white women,
Yep.
right? Like, and again, we can't pull all of them out immediately. So there has to be some reaching out to those who are willing to reach out and, you know, just because I think that, and I think I've read somewhere that that disproportionate suspension
Mm-hmm.
and kind of punitive type of
Mm-hmm.
um, action happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot between the young boys and the white women teachers. So the
Yes.
young black boys and the white, and there's just a disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, when we're talking about ADHD and the hyperactivity and then what then gets, you know, placed in special ed and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you know, my son doesn't like to sit still.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? My son
Yeah.
is bored.
Yeah. And we have to like examine those things. Like a lot of it is a lot of my work with even educators is just checking yourself.
Mm,
Sometimes it's simple as
mm,
that. It's not even like, you know, doing all this extra. No, just check yourself. Check your mindset. Where are you coming from
mm,
with this? Where did you learn it? A lot of the things that
mm,
educators do are just things that they were either done to them or things that they believe need to be done for certain children, and they just approach it from that lens. So to me, it's like, yo, check yourself. Why are you doing that? Why?
mm,
Why?
mm,
And what's at the center of that? And that's why, again, like one of my things is love and liberation. It's not love as in, oh, I love you. No, it's like you have high expectations. You see them as a human. You see them as a student with needs. um you're not there to save anybody. It's teaching and really wanting to elevate, right?
mm,
If you're only saying like sit still, fold your hands, look up, be quiet, why? Is it because is that's for you, not really for them? Is that considering their learning styles, or is that considering um their potential and ability and just their humanity? Not really, if that's all you're doing. So a lot of my work with teachers is just like checking your own self, checking your biases, examining practices, looking at best practices, interrogating the why of certain policies, and um, even looking at curriculum and things like that. And so
mm.
it just causes people to reflect and
Right,
think, and
right.
sometimes just asking the questions. um, and just also, again, another part of it is catapulting our youth into the future. So what kinds of opportunities are you providing?
Mm,
What kinds of courses, what kinds of learning? Is it project based? Is it like just the older stuff? Are you preparing them for a future that's more digital? Like, are you preparing them within STEM?
mm,
A lot of my work in education has been through STEM, and so a lot of that, I like to think, has helped to advance and move
mm.
us and look at possibilities for the future, and things that jobs that haven't even been developed yet or don't even exist yet.
Right. I mean,
So
yeah, I've seen a practical example of that in my little man, and he's at a very expensive private school, and I'm going to ask you about that in a sec. Um, but I still see there's this. He was working on, I think, like a history project or something last year, and I was helping him with this history project, and he has like these flashcards. So he's running off these, these dates and these definitions, and he's running through them. And all I did was take them and put them in a different order.
mm,
And when I started asking him in a different order, he's completely thrown off.
mm,
And I'm saying to him like, I mean, I went to K through 8 Shout out to Ebenezer Preparatory School, Pastor and Mrs. Marshall, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. So I had a very, Caribbean first 8 to 9 years of school, and
Hmm.
so I think that the main thing, and then even before that, I went to pre-K at Huru Sasa Freedom School Shule in
Mm.
Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And that was founded and ran by a community organization called the East. And there's a dope documentary I'm trying to track down on the East.
Oh,
The
wow.
critical thinking that I received from the ages of 3 to 5,
Mm.
and then from like 6 to 12,
Hmm.
set me up to where I am today. I
Hmm.
literally checked out of high school and college. I didn't learn a damn
Hmm.
thing in high school and college. Everything that I'm carrying with me today is
Yeah.
really like preschool through eighth grade
Hmm.
because we learn to problem solve,
Yes.
and so sometimes I find myself, doing stuff with little man, I'm asking them like, well, I'm trying to give them practical
Hmm.
use cases, and it's like, dude,
Mm.
what did they tell me to memorize?
Hmm.
And I'm like, yo, this this more than we pay for Temple, like,
Right, right, right.
this,
Wow.
but it's like you're still learning the same way.
Hmm.
Like, here's a bunch of terms, memorize them, say them back, get a passing grade,
Yep.
keep
Yep.
it pushing.
Yep. It's like transactional. It's
No
like,
actual application for
right.
this in real life, in real time. And besides the fact that that's just antiquated and just a trash way
Hmm.
of teaching
Hmm.
and setting up an education system, we specifically don't learn that way,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And so, you know, a lot of the kids check out. So when you talk about that digital divide and all these missing kids and these kids that didn't show up, if they're at home, they're not turning that laptop on
Mhm. No.
because they're not
And
forced to be in a
right,
building anymore. It's
right.
like, I'm not.
And that's the thing too. Like when schools continue to like teach as if it were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40,
100
100 years
because
ago, which
yeah.
the classroom is the same setup basically, right? In most
Hmm.
places.
Hmm.
Um, the kids can like teachers are no longer, and they never really always have been, but they're no longer just the keepers of information. What you spend a
Yes.
week, 2 weeks trying to teach a student, that's it. They
Yeah.
can Google that in
Yeah.
20 seconds.
Yeah.
They can look up,
Yeah.
YouTube, Google, whatever, that information like this. So that critical thinking piece is key.
Yeah.
That problem solving, the creativity, that's key. And if we're not, you know, creating opportunities for that within schools or home for learning, then you're just producing followers basically and consumers.
Yeah.
And
I,
to
I, I
me,
remember I remember as a child, like never having the ability to say why. And I look at these kids now, and why is like it has to make sense to them for
that's right.
some, you know what I mean? Like, we
That's it.
just can't say, do it because I told you so
No,
anymore. Like, do it because I told you so just doesn't play like
no,
it did with us. You
no.
know what I mean? And so, yeah, now more than ever, I think that the engagement, the meeting them where they are, is very, very key. I wanted to ask because we're talking about administrators, we talked about the teachers themselves. Um, let's talk about parents. Tell me some must dos, a checklist for parents who have their children in the system, in the school system. What are some of the things that you say are essential for them to engage with their school administration, with their teachers,
Mm.
and advocate for their children?
Yeah, so one is just like you know, stay involved, not just with like events in the school, but what's actually going on, and don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Don't just take what the school's giving, what the teacher's giving as, just accept it, but just ask questions. Ask questions that you have. Ask questions um, about what they're learning and why and how it connects to other things, right? Because everything that they're learning should be connected to both them and connected to other learning. So ask questions about that. Ask how you can support what they're learning in school with things at home, right? Not just repeating what they're doing at school, but how can you actually like support it? So for example, if they're learning about fractions, okay, how can you now take the concept of fractions and help them conceptually understand at home? How can you supplement? And then in addition to the to supplement, just helping like teaching your kids what they're not learning in school also,
Mm,
because the schools are not going to teach everything. um, they're not going to sometimes teach the full picture, and know that the knowledge that you have, the knowledge that your family has, the knowledge from your community is also very valuable.
mm,
It's not just what they're learning at school, but what you have to offer is valuable. I think sometimes there's some parents that can be or get a little bit intimidated, thinking that what they're learning is not the same thing as they learned, or not the same way. But know that everything, like sometimes simple things, are things that kids remember and that help them later on in life. Simple
mm,
lessons. Right now in schools, they're talking a lot about social emotional learning, right? To me, at home, that's something that you know can be taught at home, right?
mm,
And not just left up to the school. I remember like
mm,
my grandmother who learned to read with me. When I was 5 learning how to read and 4 learning how to read, she was learning how to read too. We are learning how to read together, right? She didn't pass, because of opportunity and where she lived. She went up to like maybe 5th grade. And
mm.
even going up to 5th grade didn't have some of those opportunities. But she's one of the
Right,
wisest persons that I know. And
right,
she taught me a
right,
lot in terms of the
right,
social emotional learning and mathematics, numeracy, literacy, all of that.
right.
So just knowing that, as parents, as guardians, as loving family, like you do have, like what you do matters for your kids.
Mm,
And
mm.
just don't be afraid to ask questions of schools.
And I think that I'll add to that. You know, home is not just that traditional, everyone who lives inside those four walls, you know what I mean? And so the salute to you and the work that you do is expanding that home. Um, because listen, some of us have real issues. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we're just not capable of being that for our seeds, our direct children.
Mhm.
But there are those of us in the community, or there needs to be those of us in the community who are that provide, you know, that, hey, look, I I don't have a positive male, role model in the household, but I can find Traum, I can find, and he's got a program going, and so
Right.
I think that's the work that those of us who, you know, are on this side of things have to be doing. It's essential that we work together. It's
That's right.
essential that we all kind of bring our brick, so to speak.
That's
You
right.
know what I mean? And we build. So,
That's it.
salute to you
Thank
and
you.
the work you're doing. That's why it was essential for me to bring you on here to acknowledge, to
Thank you.
let folks know what's going on. You know, my brand and the sponsor of this podcast, the people versus the anti people, is it's the people for a reason.
Mm.
right? It's not my brand, it's not my movement, it's the people's movement. I, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
hesitate to even jump out there sometimes and say, well, like I'm the people versus the anti-people, because it's not about that. It's really about bridging those gaps,
Mhm.
shining those lights, bringing folks like you who are on the front line and making my little audience or my little network aware that there is a Shauna Brown out here. There's a Teach for the Culture out here. She's advocating across the board for emancipation
Mhm.
from um, you know, this school system, this education system, who is really, it's set up for the privileged, and it's
Mhm.
not even doing the privileged any justice, really, because it's ass backwards.
Mhm.
So
That's it.
I'm gonna let you get the last word.
That's it. No, I was just gonna. I mean, really quickly, I love everything you just said, and really quick, I just want to add to the parent piece really quick. The other
Sure.
thing, piece of advice, really quickly, is just expose your kids to different things, especially things that they're not offering within the school system, because kids, just like we are, multidimensional, and everyone has gifts and talents, and oftentimes those things are not caught in schools. Those things are not really nurtured in schools or cultivated. So just expose your kids to, a wide variety of things outside of school as well, as much as you can.
Mm,
You know.
mm.
Um.
Question.
Mhm.
Another question before we. If you have the means, what, and if you feel like you want to have an answer, if you have an answer, if one had the means, it's a two-part question. What would you say is the best route to go? We're talking charter schools,
Oof.
finding the right private school, home school. Where would you go if you have
Oof.
the means? If nothing, if I could pull my kid today and send them wherever, would you
So
say?
I'm not even gonna say it's not gonna be public, charter, private. Is going to be in a space that is going to treat your child as a human,
Mm,
and that also is going to center love in there also, meaning
mm,
like love is accountability, love is high expectations, love is exposing, love is wanting the best education opportunity possible, and not all spaces offer that.
mm,
There's like some of the best schools, um and especially for our children going into those spaces, sometimes it's toxic for them. They might have the
mm.
highest ratings, but they might stress them out. They might
Right,
not see them as equal. They might
right.
not, you know, pour into them as they may be poured into in a different space. They may not offer opportunities for like critical thinking and problem solving, etc. So it's really, for me, it's not even just about like private, public, homeschool. It's about like the space that's really going to nurture them. And
Mm,
so finding that sometimes is hard. um, and it's an ongoing process. Like you want them to be nurtured and seen, right? Like there's schools that the state is paying millions of dollars for and saying, oh, these are, it's a magnet school, it's this, send your kids here, it's a better opportunity. And they go there, and Dr. Bettina Loves calls it spirit murdering. Like they go there
mm.
feeling like they're whole and human, and they come out defeated.
Yeah,
So just a
yeah.
space that centers love and is going to nurture your child. I don't care what kind of school it is, homeschool,
Mm,
traditional, whatever, as long as that space, treats your child well, and they get a top level education at the same time, and don't come
mm.
out feeling defeated, deflated, unseen, and like their spirit has been murdered.
I like that. How can we set up and if the one exists, please let me know. How can we set up like a grading system for these institutions where we can, on those pillars, on the things that you said, how can we start pinpointing what schools are not doing the work and which ones are, so that our parents can kind of, you know, I'm
Yeah.
sign me up for that. I'm on. I'm
Again, I think it takes community and looking at it's going to be people from different areas, different levels, different backgrounds, not just
mhm,
I'm talking about like socioeconomic and just everything. Um, and really looking at what we need, what we want. Students' voice has to be at the center of that to me too. A lot of times we
yeah,
overlook what the students are feeling and saying, but to me, like they're almost on point every time with how they're assessing situations, how they're assessing teachers, how they're assessing the school. They're almost on
yeah,
point every time because they are sitting there all day long and experiencing it as a student. So just having them at the
because
center as well.
I'm totally with you, and so in my mind I was thinking, well, how would I know? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because I'm not attending the school. So
Hmm.
I can go, I can research this school, I can sit down with administrators. They can take me around and show me
Hmm.
the campus, and it's the greatest thing. And I won't know that my kid is being harmed
Hmm.
until my kid is harmed. And if
Yeah.
it's subtle,
Yeah.
I won't even know.
Right.
And so I think that, yeah, I think those of us who from your side and from your movement who understand and can tap in, I do think that, yeah, we need to, you know, grade some of these institutions,
Totally agree.
and yeah, not on
Listen.
test scores
Yeah,
and not on,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Woo!
yeah,
Oh, you
yeah,
just tapped into
yeah.
something because, you know, sometimes I work with individual schools on it, but we need, like you said, like across the
We need a
board,
handbook.
a way
Yeah,
to,
like,
yes. And the thing
yeah,
is, with in the digital age, anything is possible. Like it's
yeah,
an idea. All right, now we got the technology to support it. You can make it happen. They're like they have Yelp online, they have all these other things online, but we need something for us that serves this purpose. So
yeah.
that's your million
All
dollar
right,
idea right there, Traum.
let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll take that offline.
Yeah.
But yeah, final words.
Just thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for inviting me on and to talk about education. A lot of times, um, it's not often the questions are not often asked. Like the questions you asked this evening, a lot of times are not asked for community or
Mm.
from the community. So I think we need to keep having these conversations. And I
I'm
thank
bringing
you
you back,
for.
no question. So
And I
we're gonna
just.
track down. We're gonna track down Dr. Emden, and
Oh,
we're gonna
yes.
bring you back.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, for sure, for
So
sure,
that's,
for sure.
just thank you for allowing me the opportunity to just come on and share some of my own experiences. And I'm grateful for your platform and the work that you're doing and elevating the voices, like you said, for the people. And so I'm appreciative of that, appreciative of you and your time this evening. So just want to say thank
Oh
you.
no, it's an honor. Um, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Uh, for real. And no, I'm definitely we're gonna have you back. You're my education correspondent.
So there we
You know what I
go.
mean? From now on, there you go. Uh, where can they find you? I'm assuming
All right, yeah, they can find me
teachfortheculture.com. Teach.
Instagram. I'm at teachfortheculture.com. It's on Instagram at teachfortheculture. And then I mentioned Culture University earlier, so that's also Instagram. It's at culture.university.
Mm,
Um and yeah, those are I think the two best ways for right now. So
I'm loving you taking bookings. Can they book you? Are you doing speaking engagements?
I
What's going on?
actually am
We
starting now that I
independent
have
now, so let's
now
come
that I
on
have
now.
like moved away from, outside the system. I'm doing more. I'm looking to connect
Yeah.
more on different levels, so community levels, colleges and universities.
Mm,
I'm looking to come out to more schools now that travel's opened up a little bit more and stuff like that. So yeah, and my
okay.
email is teachfortheculture@gmail.com. You can reach me there or DM, website, all of that. Cool.
Wonderful. Shauna, SB, my homie.
Yes.
Oh man. Thanks for
18.
being. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for being a guest on Major Journalism. Next time I see you, we gotta do we need another Bones tournament, man. I need to,
Yes.
I need to bust out the bones and
Throwback.
six
That's
love
the
somebody,
throwback.
man. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And even
yeah.
as you say that, that's math right there. Like that's the other
Facts,
part. That's
facts,
mathematics on a
facts,
different level,
facts,
applied and
facts,
stuff like that.
facts.
Just keeps you sharp.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you just
indeed,
have to look at
indeed,
education in different ways and not just paper, pencil, worksheet. Like that is math right
indeed,
there.
indeed, indeed. Well, bless up, Miss Sistrin,
Bless up, bless up.
and we'll connect again soon.
Yes.
All right, y'all.
Thank you.
Major
Thanks again.
journalism. David Traum Diggs Shanks, Shauna Brown, Teach for the Culture, the People versus Anti-People. Look for that teacher great. We ain't name it yet, but look for that coming soon. Peace and love, y'all.